I recently saw a social media post that compared voting to public transit. I love thinking about the parallels between the two. Let's say you have an important event at a far off destination, and the only way to get there is by taking a train. There are two train lines that head in the general direction of your destination, but neither one gets you exactly where you want to go. Either way, you'll have to take a train to the end of the line, then catch a bus or walk the rest of the way. There are only two options, and neither one is perfect, so why not take the one that gets you closest to your desired destination? It makes sense, right? In this election, there are two options, so we need to choose the option that will take us in the direction we want to go and the one that takes us closest to our goal. But wait. What if there was a third line that could get you much closer to your actual destination? Sounds like a great idea. The only problem is the track hasn't been built yet. With the third line, you can absolutely buy a ticket and hang on to it, but it's not going to get you any closer to your goal, at least not in this election. I'm going to let Ben give you the real life reasoning in today's episode. Why not vote third party?
Hi everyone, and welcome back to The Ramble, a series of videos about the upcoming election and why it makes moral and economic sense to vote for Joe Biden. In this episode, I want to talk about voting for third-party candidates and why I don't think that that's the right way to go in this particular election. So we've had a lot of people actually in previous videos comment that it sounds like we're more anti-Trump or we focused more on Trump's policies and not talked as much about Biden. And here we're kind of making that shift to starting to talk more about Joe Biden and why I'm voting for Joe Biden. But the honest truth is, a lot of the reason why our previous videos have focused more on Trump is because that's how we honestly feel. I'm kind of more anti-Trump than I am pro-Biden. I'm excited to vote for Biden. I'm very happy to vote for him, but I wouldn't say I'm like jumping up and down excited to vote for Joe Biden. For me, Joe Biden is just leaps and bounds better than Donald Trump, and the difference is really large. And honestly, as I've gotten to know him a little bit better, I like him more and not less. So how are we going to talk about this? I want to talk in this video about voting third party versus voting for Donald Trump or Joe Biden and kind of my thoughts on voting third party. And then in the next videos, we'll talk about who Joe Biden is as a person, who Kamala Harris is as a person, and hit on some of their policies in particular. So I've asked myself this question, and I've heard it from other people as well. Like, if you're not thrilled about voting for Joe Biden, why not vote third party? Or why even vote at all? Like, maybe we should just sit this election out. But I actually feel pretty strongly that this isn't the right election to vote third party. From an ideological perspective, I really get this. Like, I really would love to vote for someone that I'm thrilled about, that matches exactly my morals and my values and what I think are the policies that are the best for our country. But hopefully it's come out from our other videos that I'm much more pragmatic when it comes to politics. And I try to think about, what's going to get me closer or towards what I think is best for our country. And, the fact of the matter is our political system isn't really set up for a third party to have much of an impact at all. And I think in this particular election, there's essentially no chance that a third party candidate is going to make much of a splash in the election at all. Our political system, the way it works, as everyone knows, is you get one vote and whoever gets the most votes wins. And that type of a system ends up in essentially favoring a two-party type of system. And so, you could think about voting for a third party to kind of voice your disagreement with the two parties that are in power. But essentially what that's going to do is it's going to leave all the power to other voters who vote for one or the other party, and your vote isn't really going to matter very much. So one of the reasons why I think voting third party in this particular election might not be a good idea is maybe hoping to learn some lessons from the last election. So if you remember in 2016, Donald Trump was trailing in the polls pretty badly leading up to the election, and kind of everyone expected that he would lose and Hillary Clinton would win the election. But it turned out a lot of people either didn't go out and vote because they thought the election was decided, or voted third party, maybe again because they thought the election was already decided and they wanted to register that their dissatisfaction with both parties. And as a result, for example, if the votes that went to the Green Party in just 3 states, in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, if those votes had transferred to Hillary Clinton, the margin of victory was small enough in those 3 states that she would have won all 3 of those states and would have been our next president. And so, trying to learn some of those lessons, I understand the desire to send a message or just sit it out because it feels like the election is decided or something. But, again, today, Donald Trump is trailing by a fairly large margin in the polls. And we need to make sure that we don't make that same mistake again. And I think voting third party can disrupt the election in kind of a similar way like it did in the last election. But there's actually 2 other reasons why I think voting third party might be a bad idea in this particular election that I wanted to point out. And they're both related to this idea of, I think it's kind of important that Biden wins by a large margin in this election. The first reason is, if you, like me, feel dissatisfied and frustrated with the direction that the Republican Party has moved in the last 4 years, then I would like to send a message to them that I'm unhappy. Now, how do I send that message? Well, by voting is that's our best way to send a message. And I could vote third party. That takes a vote away from the Republican Party, but I can send a much stronger message by transferring my vote from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. That's twice as strong of a message, and I think if Joe Biden wins in a landslide, that's our best shot at the Republican Party kind of waking up and realizing that this move to a Donald Trump version of conservatism is not what aligns with my policy and moral views. And so for me, it's important to not vote third party because I can have a much stronger voice. I can have twice as strong of a voice if I move my vote from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. The second reason is perhaps even more important. So I personally have been very uncomfortable and very dissatisfied with the rhetoric that Donald Trump has used in the past several weeks, sort of making claims that the election is rigged, or making claims that there are large amounts of voter fraud that are going to make the election not valid. And he said that he may be unwilling to accept the results of the election. That simply is not okay. That's a fundamental part of our democracy, is the peaceful transfer of power. It's something we've had for the past 200 plus years. And I'm not willing to let Donald Trump disrupt that now. And I don't think that anyone should. But I'm truly worried about it. And I think it's a significant risk. It's something that he's very openly, has been very open in talking about. So one of the best ways to avoid that, I think, is if Joe Biden wins by such a large margin, that there's really no way that other people would believe his claims that voter fraud caused the change in the outcome of the election. Now, importantly, there is actually no evidence of widespread voter fraud, either by mail or in person. And that's contrary to the claims of Donald Trump, where he's said a lot of times that voter fraud is rampant. There are bipartisan groups who have come out and said very clearly that there isn't widespread voter fraud. It's just not a large factor in elections. So you shouldn't believe that, but even if there are some people who do believe it, as long as that margin of victory is large enough, I think we have a much better shot at a peaceful transfer of power, which is very, very important, I think, especially given the climate that we're in right now. So for those reasons, I feel like voting third party just isn't the way to go in this election. Now, that's not because I don't want there to be a third party. In fact, I would love for there to be a third party. And in fact, the majority of Americans would like for there to be a third party. So if now isn't the right time, what is the right way to get a third party? Well, my sense of this is that the reason why we don't have a third party, why we have a two-party system, is because of how the whole electoral system is set up right now. And we need to make changes to the Constitution to change the way that elections work in the United States. In particular, I would be all in favor of a switch to ranked choice voting. Now, if you're unfamiliar with ranked choice voting, it's very, very simple. Instead of voting for one candidate, you rank all of the candidates that are on the ballot in order of your preference. And then the system uses those rankings to, basically what would happen is if your most preferred candidate doesn't have enough votes to be viable, then they transfer your vote from your first candidate to your second preferred candidate. And then they check and see, how does the ranking stack up, and sort of like go down the ranking of people's votes. And what this does is it would allow people, you could vote for whatever candidate you like the very most, and then you rank the next candidate below that. And it provides a venue for centrist, moderate political candidates to actually get some traction. So we don't end up with such a sort of bipolar distribution of candidates that we have to vote for, and so many people feeling unhappy who are maybe more in the center. There are some, in Maine, they have instituted ranked choice voting. There are some cities around the country that have started to institute it. It's gained a little bit of traction. Please, after the election, I will be writing my senators and the Congress people that are in my area, asking for them to look at reforms to our electoral system, whether that's getting rid of the electoral college or changing the way that primaries work, maybe getting rid of caucuses, or going towards ranked choice voting. I think all of these are ideas that can help move our electoral system to something that works and makes more sense in the 21st century. So that's what I think is the right direction to go in for how to get a third party in power, to how to get be able to get candidates that are more aligned with what we think. But I don't think voting third party in this election is going to be the way to go about it. And I think the risks of voting third party are actually quite high. So that's my pitch for why I don't think it makes sense to vote third party in this election. And in future videos, I will talk about why I actually feel really good about voting for Joe Biden, and why I think his character and his policies are a step in the right direction for our country.